The thunderous crack of floodwater tearing through Winding Creek Valley sent birds fleeing skyward as Emma Carson clutched her 6-month-old daughter against her chest. The wagon beneath her, already beginning to lift with the surging current. It was 1876 in the Arizona Territory, and what had begun as a simple journey to her sister's homestead was rapidly becoming a fight for survival. Emma had been warned about flash floods in this region, how the narrow canyons could fill within minutes when storms gathered in the distant mountains. But the morning sky had been clear when she'd set out, her baby Lily bundled safely beside her, the hired driver confident they could make the crossing before any weather turned. Now that driver was gone, swept away in the first violent surge of water that had caught them at the riverbed crossing. "Hold on, Lily," Emma whispered, her voice trembling as she climbed atop the wagon seat, desperately searching for higher ground. The roar of rushing water drowned out her daughter's frightened cries. The wagon lurched, tipping precariously as the muddy torrent rose higher. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized they were moments from being swept away from the ridge above. Isaac Reed watched in horror as the flood swallowed the valley floor. He had been tracking a mountain lion that had been preying on his cattle when the distant rumble of floodwater reached his ears. Now, astride his sturdy chestnut gelding, Thunder, he spotted the stranded wagon and the woman clutching something to her chest, a baby. He realized with a jolt of panic. Isaac didn't hesitate. He spurred Thunder down the slope, the horse's powerful legs eating up the distance despite the treacherous terrain. Water was already swirling around the wagon's wheels, the woman now standing atop the seat, her face a mask of terror. "Hold on," Isaac shouted, though he knew his voice couldn't possibly carry over the roar of the flood. The water was rising faster than he'd anticipated, already reaching the wagon bed. In moments, the entire rig would be swept away. With a quick prayer, Isaac guided Thunder directly into the churning water at the edge of the flood. The horse balked momentarily, then plunged forward at his insistent urging. The frigid water immediately soaked Isaac to his waist, the current tugging dangerously at Thunder's legs. 20 more feet, Isaac muttered, his eyes fixed on the woman who now saw him coming. Her face transformed with desperate hope as she clutched her baby tighter. The wagon shifted suddenly, beginning to tilt as the floodwater undermined its wheels. Emma screamed, struggling to maintain her balance while protecting her child. The wagon lurched again, now sliding sideways in the current. Isaac was still 10 feet away when he realized he wouldn't reach them in time on horseback. Without a second thought, he slipped from Thunder's saddle into the chest-deep water, fighting against the powerful current. Years of breaking wild horses had given him strength, but the flood tested every ounce of it as he battled toward the wagon. "Jump to me," Isaac shouted when he was close enough, extending his arms. Emma shook her head in terror, frozen in place as the wagon groaned beneath her. "The wagon's going," Isaac called. "You have to jump now." With a splintering crack, the wagon began to roll. Emma, seeing no other choice, leapt toward the stranger with Lily clutched tightly against her. Isaac lunged forward, catching her around the waist as the wagon disappeared beneath the churning surface behind them. The current instantly pulled at them, threatening to drag all three under. Isaac gritted his teeth, one arm holding the woman and child while the other fought against the flood's pull. Thunder had retreated to safer ground, watching nervously from the shallows. "Hold on to my neck," Isaac gasped. When Emma complied, he used both arms to swim, angling toward where his horse waited. Each stroke was a battle against nature's fury, his muscles burning with the effort of fighting the current while supporting 2 additional lives. After what seemed like an eternity, Isaac felt his boots touch ground. He staggered to his feet, still holding Emma and her child as he waded through progressively shallower water until they reached the muddy bank where Thunder waited. Collapsing onto solid ground, Isaac gulped air into his burning lungs. Beside him, the woman was doing the same while checking her baby with frantic hands. Is your little one all right?" Isaac managed between breaths. Emma nodded, tears mixing with the water streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, she's okay." Her voice broke as she looked at her rescuer. "You saved us. You risked your life." Isaac pushed himself to a sitting position, water streaming from his clothes. "Anyone would have done the same, madam." "No," Emma said firmly, meeting his eyes. "They wouldn't have. You dove from your horse into a flash flood to save strangers." Her grip on her baby tightened. "I'm Emma Carson and this is Lily. I owe you our lives, Mr. Raid, Isaac Raid." He managed a smile despite his exhaustion. "And you don't owe me anything, Mrs. Carson." "Miss," Emma corrected automatically, then immediately looked embarrassed by the clarification. Isaac nodded, noting the information while trying not to appear too interested. His ranch was no place for a woman and child, that's what he told himself, at least. Years of solitude had suited him fine. Or so he'd believed until this moment. "We need to get you both somewhere dry and warm," Isaac said, rising to his feet and whistling for Thunder to approach. "My ranch is about 3 miles from here. Can you ride?" Emma looked down at her drenched dress, then at the powerful horse. "It's been some time, but yes." Isaac helped Emma onto Thunder's back, then handed Lily up to her before swinging up behind them. The baby, remarkably, had stopped crying and now stared up at Isaac with curious eyes. "Hold on tight," Isaac instructed, keeping one arm securely around Emma's waist as he guided Thunder up the ridge toward his ranch. As they rode, Emma explained that she had been traveling to her sister's homestead near Silver Springs, about 20 miles farther west. The driver she'd hired in town had assured her the creek crossing was safe despite recent rains. "Creeks around here can flood even when there's not a cloud in the sky," Isaac explained. "Storms in the mountains send water rushing down with barely any warning. Most locals know better than to cross during the rainy season." "I should have known better," Emma said quietly. "My sister warned me in her letters. Don't blame yourself. Even experienced folks get caught sometimes." They crested a rise, and Isaac's ranch came into view, a modest but well-maintained cabin with a large barn and corral. Several cattle grazed in the distance, and smoke curled from the cabin's chimney. "You have help?" Emma asked, surprised to see the smoke. Isaac chuckled. "Just my ranch hand, Joaquin. He's been with me for 5 years now, probably cooking up something for dinner." As they approached, a weathered Mexican man emerged from the barn, his eyes widening at the sight of their waterlogged appearance and the unexpected guests. "Dios mío, what happened?" Joaquin called, rushing to help them dismount. "Flash flood caught Miss Carson and her baby at Winding Creek Crossing," Isaac explained, carefully lifting Emma down before taking the baby while she steadied herself. "The poor señorita and niña," Joaquin said sympathetically. "Come inside quickly. I will take care of the horse." Isaac led Emma and Lily into the cabin, which was surprisingly neat for a bachelor's dwelling. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with comfortable-looking chairs drawn up before it. Simple but sturdy furniture filled the main room, and Emma could see a kitchen area and 2 doors that presumably led to bedrooms. "You'll need dry clothes," Isaac said, suddenly aware of their predicament. I don't have any women's things, but I can offer you a shirt and trousers." "They'll be too big, but—" "That would be wonderful, thank you," Emma said, saving him from his awkwardness. "And perhaps something we could use as a blanket for Lily." Isaac nodded, disappearing into one of the bedrooms. He returned with a clean flannel shirt, a pair of trousers, and a soft wool blanket. "The bedroom's yours," he said, gesturing to the door. "There's water in the pitcher for washing up. I'll see what we can do about warming some milk for the little one." Emma's gratitude shone in her eyes as she took the offered items and retreated to the bedroom. Once alone, she quickly stripped off her sodden clothing and dried herself with a towel Isaac had provided. His shirt hung nearly to her knees, and she had to roll the trouser's waistband several times, but the dry clothing felt like heaven against her chilled skin. She unwrapped Lily, relieved to find that her innermost wrappings had stayed relatively dry thanks to the oilcloth she'd used to protect her from the journey's dust. After drying her daughter and wrapping her in the wool blanket, Emma returned to the main room, where Isaac was heating milk in a small pot over the fire. "You seem to know something about babies," Emma observed, watching him test the milk's temperature on his wrist. Isaac looked up, a shadow crossing his face. "My sister had 2 little ones before she passed. I helped when I could." "I'm sorry," Emma said softly. "I lost my parents last year. That's why I'm joining my sister. She's all the family I have left except for Lily." Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family's precious out here." He poured the warmed milk into a cup and handed it to Emma. "It's not ideal for feeding her, but it should do until we can get you both to your sisters." Emma sat in one of the chairs by the fire, cradling Lily as she carefully helped her drink from the cup. Isaac busied himself hanging their wet clothes near the fire to dry, then excused himself to change his own sodden garments. When he returned, Joaquin had come in from the barn and was busily preparing a hearty stew for dinner. The older man chatted amiably with Emma, asking about her journey and cooing over little Lily, who seemed to have recovered completely from their ordeal and was now gurgling happily. As they ate dinner, Emma learned that Isaac had come to Arizona Territory 10 years earlier, after serving briefly in the Army following the Civil War. He'd worked as a ranch hand until saving enough to buy this small spread, which he'd slowly built into a modest but successful cattle operation. "And you, Señorita," Joaquin asked, "how does a young mother come to travel alone through such dangerous country?" Emma's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "My husband died before Lily was born. Influenza took him last winter." The pain in her voice was evident despite the time that had passed. "I was teaching at a school in Missouri, but after losing Daniel, I couldn't stay. My sister Martha has been begging me to join her family in Silver Springs." "I'm sorry for your loss," Isaac said quietly. The simple words carried genuine sympathy. Emma nodded her thanks, blinking back unexpected tears. "I thought a new start would be best for both of us." She looked down at Lily, who was now sleeping peacefully in a makeshift cradle Isaac had fashioned from a drawer padded with blankets. "You're welcome to stay here until the floods recede," Isaac offered. "Might be a few days before it's safe to cross the creek." "I couldn't impose. It's no imposition," Isaac insisted. "I can't in good conscience send you back out there until it's safe." Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you. You've already done so much for us." That night, as Emma lay in Isaac's bed, he had insisted on taking a pallet in the main room. She found herself thinking about her rescuer. There was something in his quiet strength that reminded her of Daniel. Yet Isaac was different, more reserved, perhaps, but with an underlying gentleness she hadn't expected in a man who lived such a rugged life. Meanwhile, Isaac stared at the ceiling, listening to the occasional soft sounds from his bedroom where Emma and her baby slept. It had been years since a woman had been under his roof. His sister's visits had stopped when she died of tuberculosis 3 years earlier, and since then, it had just been him and Joaquin, with occasional visits from neighboring ranchers. He told himself, His restlessness was simply due to sleeping in the main room rather than his bed. But Isaac knew that wasn't the entire truth. Something about Emma Carson, her courage, her devotion to her child, the quiet dignity with which she carried her grief, had awakened feelings he'd long thought dormant. The next morning brought clear skies but reports from Joaquin, who had ridden out at dawn, that the creek remained dangerously high. 2 days, maybe 3 before it's safe to cross, he reported as they ate breakfast. Emma tried to hide her disappointment. I should send word to my sister. She'll be worried when we don't arrive. I'll ride to Silver Springs today, Isaac offered. It's a different route than through the creek, crossing longer but passable. I can let her know you're safe and will be delayed. Gratitude filled Emma's face. Would you? That would ease my mind considerably. Of course. I need to check on some cattle in that direction anyway. It wasn't entirely true, but Isaac felt a need to help this woman who had already endured so much. While Isaac was gone, Emma insisted on making herself useful. Despite Joaquin's protests that she was a guest, she helped prepare meals and even mended some of Isaac's shirts that had been awaiting attention. Lily proved to be an easy baby, content to watch the activities around her from her makeshift cradle or from a blanket spread on the cabin floor. Your Nina, she is very good, Joaquin observed as he whittled a small wooden horse while keeping an eye on Lily so Emma could focus on her mending. She's always been patient, Emma said with a smile. Even when. She paused, remembering the terror of the flood. Even yesterday, she barely cried until we were safe. Joaquin nodded sagely. Some souls are old even in young bodies. She has your strength, Senorita. Emma looked up, surprised by the compliment. I don't feel very strong most days. Yet you travel across dangerous country with a baby, seeking a better life. That is strength. The old ranch hand returned to his whittling. Senor Isaac, he recognized that strength too. I have not seen him dive into danger like that for anyone. Emma felt a flush rise to her cheeks, which she blamed on the fire's warmth. He's a good man. The best, Joaquin agreed. Too long alone, though. Before Emma could respond, the sound of hoofbeats announced Isaac's return. He entered the cabin with wind-blown hair and trailed dust on his clothes but a smile on his face. Your sister sends her relief that you're safe, he told Emma. And this. He handed over a small bundle that contained clean clothes for both Emma and Lily, along with a letter. You actually made it all the way there? Emma asked, touched by his thoroughness. Isaac nodded. She's a kind woman, your sister. Insisted I stay for a meal and sent these back with me. She understands about the flood and says to come when it's safe, not before. Emma unfolded the letter and read it quickly, tears springing to her eyes. She says you told her how you saved us. She looked up at Isaac. She calls you an angel sent from heaven. Isaac's face reddened. I'm no angel, Miss Carson, just happened to be in the right place. That evening, after Joaquin had retired to his small room attached to the barn, Isaac and Emma sat before the fire. Lily was asleep, and a comfortable silence had fallen between them. May I ask you something personal? Emma finally said, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her borrowed shirt. Isaac nodded, his face illuminated by the firelight. Have you never married? A successful rancher like yourself? Isaac's gaze remained on the flames. Nearly did once. Her name was Catherine. We were to be married when I returned from my army service. He paused. She chose someone else while I was gone, a shopkeeper with steadier prospects than a former soldier with dreams of ranching. I'm sorry, Emma said softly. Isaac shrugged, though the old hurt was visible in his eyes. It was for the best. She wasn't suited to this life. Few women are. Yet you built all this anyway. I did. His eyes met hers. What about you? Will you remarry someday? Emma looked down at her hands at the faint tan line where her wedding ring had been until recently. She'd sold it to help fund their journey west. I hadn't thought about it. Daniel was everything to me. When he died, I thought that part of my life was over. And now, the question hung in the air between them, loaded with potential meaning. Emma looked up, meeting Isaac's steady gaze. Now I realize that life continues, even when we think it can't possibly go on, she said quietly. For Lily's sake at first, but eventually for my own as well. Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. It takes courage to start again. No more than diving into a flood to save strangers, Emma replied with a small smile. Isaac chuckled. That wasn't courage. That was not thinking clearly. I disagree. Emma's voice grew serious. A man who doesn't think about others wouldn't have done what you did. Wouldn't have opened his home to us, ridden miles to ease my sister's worry, or given up his bed for strangers. Isaac seemed embarrassed by her praise. Anyone would have. Please don't say anyone would have done the same, Emma interrupted gently. We both know that's not true. There are good men in this world, Isaac read, but they're rarer than we pretend. The use of his first name didn't escape his notice, nor did the warmth in her voice. Isaac found himself wanting to reach across the space between their chairs, to take her hand in his, but he resisted the impulse. It's getting late, he said instead. We should both get some rest. Emma nodded, rising from her chair. At the bedroom door she paused. Thank you, Isaac, not just for saving us, but for everything since. After she closed the door, Isaac remained by the fire, watching the flames slowly die to embers. Sleep was a long time coming that night. The next day brought unexpected visitors. 3 riders approached the ranch around midday, 2 men and a woman, all heavily armed. Isaac, Joaquin called from where he'd been repairing a fence. Harrington and his people coming. Isaac frowned, setting down the saddle he'd been mending. Stay inside, he told Emma, who had been hanging laundry on a line near the cabin. Take Lily and don't come out until I call for you. What's wrong? Emma asked, alarmed by his sudden tension. Probably nothing, Isaac said, though his hand moved to rest on the revolver at his hip. Just some neighbors who aren't particularly friendly. Emma gathered Lily quickly and retreated into the cabin, watching through the window as the riders approached. The man in the lead was broad-shouldered and imposing, with a thick beard and cold eyes. The woman beside him was hard-faced, her hair pulled back severely under a worn hat. The third rider was younger, with a family resemblance to the older man. Raid, the bearded man called as they reined in. Heard there was a flood down your way. That's right, Harrington, Isaac replied evenly. Winding Creek overflowed yesterday. Shame, Harrington said without sympathy. Also heard you fished something out of it, or someone. Isaac's stance shifted slightly, moving to block the cabin door more directly. News travels fast. Small territory, Harrington replied. Tom Mason saw you riding with a woman and child yesterday, said you pulled them from the flood. That's my business, not yours. The woman spoke up, her voice as hard as her expression. Everything in this valley is our business, Reed. You know that. Actually, Vera, I don't know that, Isaac replied coldly. This is my land, and who I help is my concern alone. The younger man spat on the ground. Still putting on airs, ain't you, Reed? Think you're better than the rest of us because you've got a fancy army education. What do you want, Harrington? Isaac asked, ignoring the younger man's taunt. Just being neighborly, Harrington said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thought we might offer assistance to the stranded travelers. Our ranch is bigger, after all, more comfortable for a lady and child. They're fine here, Isaac said firmly. I'll be taking them to Silver Springs once the creek is passable. Silver Springs, Harrington's interest sharpened. That where they're headed? Isaac cursed himself for revealing that detail. As I said, it's not your concern. Everything west of here is Harrington territory, the older man said, including the road to Silver Springs. Public roads belong to everyone, Isaac countered. Harrington chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. You keep believing that, Reed. He turned his horse. We'll be seeing you around. And your guests. The three riders departed, leaving Isaac standing tensely in the yard. Only when they were well out of sight did he return to the cabin, where Emma waited with Lily in her arms. Who were they? She asked, her face pale. Grant Harrington and his family, Isaac said grimly. They own the largest ranch in the territory, and think that gives them the right to control everything and everyone around here. Why were they so interested in us? Isaac sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. Harrington has been trying to take over all the small ranches in the area. He's already pushed out 3 of my neighbors. He wants this land because it controls access to the best water for miles. And now he knows I'm headed to Silver Springs, Emma said, understanding dawning on her face. Where my sister and brother-in-law have a homestead. Isaac nodded grimly. Harrington's been eyeing that valley for years. Your brother-in-law, is he a rancher? No, a blacksmith, but they have a good piece of land with a natural spring. Martha's letters mentioned some trouble with neighbors, but I never thought. Emma clutched Lily tighter. I've brought trouble to your door. No, Isaac said firmly. Harrington was trouble long before you arrived. This changes nothing except that we'll need to be more careful when we leave for Silver Springs. Joaquin, who had entered during their conversation, nodded in agreement. The creek will be passable tomorrow, I think. You should go at first light before Harrington can set up any complications. That night, tension filled the cabin. Isaac cleaned his rifle and revolver methodically at the table while Emma put Lily to bed. When she returned to the main room, she found him staring at the weapons with a troubled expression. You think they would really try to stop us? She asked quietly. Isaac looked up. Harrington plays by his own rules. He's never confronted me directly before, but he's not above using underhanded tactics. Because of me and Lily, guilt tinged her voice. No, Isaac said firmly. Because of land and water rights, you're just an excuse. He hesitated. Your sister's letters, did they mention a man named Prescott? Emma thought for a moment. Yes, a neighbor who's been pressuring them to sell. Martha said he's been increasingly difficult since her husband refused his last offer. Prescott is Harrington's cousin, Isaac explained. He does Grant's dirty work in the outlying areas. Emma sank into a chair. So my sister's family is already tangled up with these people, unfortunately. But they've held out so far, which means they're strong. Isaac set his revolver aside, and they'll be stronger with you there. Will they? Emma asked softly. Or am I bringing more trouble? Isaac reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The contact sent a warmth through Emma that had nothing to do with the fire burning in the hearth. You are not trouble, Emma Carson, Isaac said, his voice low and intense. You are one of the bravest women I've ever met, traveling all this way to start a new life for yourself and your daughter. Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I don't feel brave most days, just determined. That's what bravery is, Isaac said, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. Doing what needs to be done despite your fear. Emma looked at their joined hands, then up at Isaac's face. In the lamplight, she could see every line etched by sun and hardship, the small scar near his right eye, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. In just 2 days, this man had become important to her in ways she couldn't fully explain. Isaac, she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. A soft cry from the bedroom interrupted them. Lily had awakened. Emma reluctantly withdrew her hand and rose to tend to her daughter, leaving Isaac staring after her with an expression of mingled regret and longing. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Isaac had been up before first light, saddling Thunder and a gentler mare for Emma and Lily. Joaquin had packed provisions and checked the creek at dawn, confirming it had receded enough for safe crossing. "You'll need to be careful at the Silver Creek ford," Joaquin advised as they prepared to depart. "It's still running high." Isaac nodded, securing the last of their supplies. Emma emerged from the cabin wearing the clothes her sister had sent, with Lily bundled warmly against the morning chill. "Ready?" Isaac asked, offering a hand to help her mount. Emma nodded, though her expression was troubled. "I feel like we're sneaking away." "Better safe than confrontational with men like Harrington," Isaac replied, lifting Lily carefully while Emma settled herself in the saddle. He passed the baby up, then made sure the sling they'd fashioned was secure, allowing Emma to carry Lily while keeping both hands free for riding. With a final wave to Joaquin, they set out, taking a less obvious trail that wound through a stand of pines before connecting with the main road to Silver Springs. Isaac rode slightly ahead, alert for any sign of trouble, his rifle within easy reach across his saddle. They had been traveling for about 2 hours when Isaac suddenly raised his hand, signaling Emma to stop. He dismounted quickly, moving to her side. "What is it?" she whispered, one hand protectively covering Lily. "Riders ahead," Isaac said quietly. "Could be nothing, but let's not take chances." "There's a ravine just off the trail that leads to an old miner's cabin. We can wait there until they pass." Emma nodded, following Isaac as he led the horses off the trail and down a nearly invisible path into a narrow ravine. The cabin he'd mentioned was little more than a shack, half collapsed from years of neglect, but it offered concealment from the main trail. They had barely secured the horses behind the cabin when the sound of riders reached them. Isaac motioned for Emma to stay hidden inside what remained of the structure while he crept to a position where he could observe the trail above. 4 riders passed, moving at a steady pace. Even from a distance, Isaac recognized Grant Harrington and his son among them. They were heading toward Silver Springs, exactly as he had feared. When they were gone, Isaac returned to Emma. "Harrington," he confirmed grimly, "headed to Silver Springs ahead of us." "Why?" Emma asked, though she suspected the answer. "To cause trouble for your family, most likely. Or to set up an ambush for us along the way." Isaac considered their options. "We need to reach Silver Springs before they can do whatever they're planning, but we can't use the main trail now." "Is there another way?" Isaac nodded slowly. "There's an old Apache trail that cuts through the high country. It's rough going, but it would bring us to Silver Springs from the north, avoiding the main road entirely." "How much longer would it take?" "If we push hard, we could still reach your sisters by nightfall," Isaac said. "But it won't be an easy ride, especially with Lily." Emma straightened her shoulders. "We can manage. I won't let Harrington threaten my family because of me." Isaac's admiration for her grew. With a nod, he helped her remount and they set off on a steep trail that climbed into the foothills. The path was indeed challenging, narrow in places, with loose rock that required careful navigation. Emma proved to be a better rider than she had initially suggested, handling the difficult terrain with determination while keeping Lily secure and comfortable. By midday, they had climbed high enough to see the valley stretching below them, the main road a distant ribbon winding through the landscape. They paused to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of jerky and biscuits. Lily remained remarkably content, sleeping through the roughest parts of the journey and waking only to be fed and changed. "She's a remarkable baby," Isaac commented as Emma settled Lily back into her sling after feeding her. Emma smiled, stroking her daughter's cheek. She is. Daniel always said she'd be strong like me, but I think she has his calm nature. Tell me about him, Isaac said, surprising himself with the request. Your husband. Emma looked up, startled, then her expression softened. Daniel was a school teacher like me. That's how we met. He was kind and thoughtful, always putting others before himself. She paused, lost in memory. He loved books and music and had the most wonderful laugh. When he got sick, it happened so quickly. One week he was teaching his students, the next. Her voice faltered. Isaac moved closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. I'm sorry you lost him. Emma nodded, blinking back tears. The hardest part was knowing Lily would never know her father. He was so excited about her coming. They sat in silence for a moment, the bond between them deepening with the shared understanding of loss. Finally, Isaac spoke. We should move on. There's still a lot of ground to cover. The afternoon brought increasingly difficult terrain as they navigated the Apache Trail. In places, they had to dismount and lead the horses along narrow ledges where a misstep could mean disaster. Isaac stayed close to Emma, often holding Lily while she managed particularly treacherous sections. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they finally emerged from the high country onto a ridge overlooking a small valley. In the distance, Emma could see scattered buildings that made up the settlement of Silver Springs. There, Isaac pointed to a homestead set apart from the main cluster of buildings. That matches the description your sister gave. The blacksmith shop is visible from here. Emma's heart lifted at the sight. We made it, and no sign of Harrington. Not yet, Isaac cautioned. Let's not celebrate until you're safely with your family. They descended carefully, approaching the homestead from the north as planned. As they drew closer, Emma could make out a modest house with a large workshop beside it. Smoke rose from both chimneys, and a small garden plot was visible near the house. When they were within hailing distance, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the setting sun. Even from a distance, Emma recognized her sister's tall, slender figure. Martha. She called, urging her horse forward. The woman's face transformed with joy. Emma! Emma! She rushed toward them, her skirts billowing around her legs. The sisters embraced tearfully after Emma dismounted while Isaac stood back, holding both horses' reins and watching the reunion with a smile. Martha fussed over Lily, exclaiming at how she'd grown since the daguerreotype Emma had sent months earlier. A tall, broad-shouldered man emerged from the workshop, wiping his hands on a leather apron. You must be Isaac Reid, he said, approaching with an extended hand. Martha told me what you did for my sister-in-law and niece. We're in your debt, sir. Isaac shook the offered hand. James Townsend, I presume, and there's no debt. Anyone would have. If you say anyone would have done the same, I might have to disagree with you, Emma interrupted, turning from her sister with a knowing smile. James laughed. Come inside, both of you. You look like you've had a rough journey. As they approached the house, Isaac glanced back toward the main road with a troubled expression. Before we settle in, you should know we saw Grant Harrington and some of his men on the road to Silver Springs today. We took the high trail to avoid them. James's jovial expression hardened. Harrington. That explains why Gordon Prescott was here earlier, more insistent than ever that we sell out. Prescott was here today, Isaac asked sharply. James nodded. About 3 hours ago. Said things were about to change in Silver Springs and we'd be wise to take his offer before it was too late. They knew we were coming, Emma said, hugging Lily closer. That's why they tried to get here before us. Martha looked alarmed. What does our Emma have to do with Harrington's schemes? Nothing directly, Isaac explained. But Harrington has been looking for leverage against any landowner who won't sell to him. A woman traveling alone with a baby might have provided that leverage against you. James's expression darkened further. There's been talk in town that Harrington's brought in hired guns from Texas. 3 rough-looking men arrived on yesterday's stage. We should get inside, Martha said, suddenly nervous. This isn't a conversation for the open yard. Once inside the cozy home, Martha took Lily so Emma could wash up and change into fresh clothes. James and Isaac remained in the main room, discussing the situation in low voices. Harrington's been trying to buy up water rights throughout the county, James explained. Our spring is one of the most reliable in the area, and it feeds the creek that runs through several smaller homesteads to the south. If he controls your water, he controls everyone downstream, Isaac concluded. James nodded grimly. The other blacksmith in town sold out last month. Moved his family to California. Now I'm the only smith for 20 miles, which makes me essential to the community. And another obstacle to Harrington controlling everything, Isaac added. When Emma and Martha returned with a freshly changed and fed Lily, the men brought them up to date on their discussion. Martha looked worried, but Emma's expression was resolute. So what do we do? She asked. I won't be the cause of more trouble for you. You're not the cause of anything, James said firmly. Harrington is the problem, not you. We stand our ground, Isaac said. Together. The simple declaration hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone in the room. Isaac wasn't just delivering Emma and Lily to safety. He was committing himself to their cause. Martha gave her husband a meaningful look, then smiled. Well, that's settled then. Now I've got a stew that's been simmering all day and you all must be starving. The evening passed pleasantly despite the underlying tension. After dinner, James showed Isaac the improvements he'd made to the property, including a sophisticated irrigation system that maximized the spring's output. Martha and Emma caught up on family news, with Lily passed happily between them. As darkness fell, sleeping arrangements were discussed. The house had 2 bedrooms, one for James and Martha, and a smaller one that had been prepared for Emma and Lily. Isaac can take the workshop loft, James suggested. I've slept there myself when working late. It's comfortable enough. I should return to my ranch tomorrow, Isaac said, though his tone lacked conviction. Joaquin will need help with the cattle. Nonsense, Martha declared. Your man Joaquin seemed perfectly capable when we met him. Besides, we're having a barn raising for the Wilsons on Saturday. Every able-bodied man is needed. Isaac caught Emma's gaze across the room. Her eyes seemed to ask him to stay, though she said nothing. Well, I suppose Joaquin can manage for a few more days, Isaac conceded. That night, as Emma settled Lily in the small cradle Martha had prepared, a soft knock came at her bedroom door. She opened it to find Isaac standing there, looking somewhat uncomfortable. I wanted to make sure you were settled in all right, he said, his voice low to avoid waking the baby. We are, Emma assured him. Thanks to you. Isaac nodded, seeming reluctant to leave. Emma, about Harrington, don't underestimate him. He's used to getting what he wants. I'm not afraid of him, Emma said, lifting her chin slightly. That's what worries me, Isaac replied with a small smile. Just be careful, promise me. The concern in his voice touched her deeply. I promise. Their eyes held for a long moment, unspoken feelings passing between them. Finally, Isaac cleared his throat. Well, good night then. Good night, Isaac, Emma replied softly, watching as he turned and walked away. The next morning brought activity to the Townsend homestead. James had orders to fill in his blacksmith shop, and Isaac immediately offered to help. Emma and Martha spent the morning catching up on years of separation while tending to household tasks. Lily delighted in the attention from her aunt, showing off her newly discovered ability to roll over. Around midday, a rider approached the town's deputy sheriff, a young man named Philip Collins. "Morning, Mrs. Townsend," he called as James emerged from the workshop. "Mr. Townsend." "Deputy," James acknowledged. "What brings you out our way?" "Just making rounds," Collins said, though his eyes darted nervously to Isaac. "Heard you had visitors arrive yesterday." "My sister-in-law and her daughter," James confirmed, "and Mr. Reed, who escorted them safely here." Collins nodded. "Mr. Harrington mentioned you might have company, asked me to make sure everything was in order." Isaac stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag. "And is it, Deputy, in order?" Collins shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "No troubles to report, Mr. Reed. Just doing my job. Your job being to check on law-abiding citizens at Harrington's request." Isaac asked pointedly. The deputy flushed. "Now see here, it's all right, Isaac," James interrupted. "Deputy Collins is just doing his duty." He turned to the lawman. "You can tell Mr. Harrington that my family is settled in nicely, and we appreciate his concern." The irony in James's tone wasn't lost on anyone. Collins nodded stiffly and turned his horse. "The sheriff asked me to remind folks about the town meeting tomorrow night. Issues regarding water rights are on the agenda." After the deputy had ridden away, James turned to Isaac. "That was Harrington testing the waters. Collins is a decent enough young man, but the sheriff is firmly in Harrington's pocket." "The town meeting could be important," Isaac noted. "If Harrington's planning something significant, he might show his hand there." "We'll both attend," James decided. "Martha and Emma can stay here with Lily." Emma, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "I should go too. If this concerns my family, I want to be present." "It could get contentious," James warned. "All the more reason for me to understand what we're facing," Emma insisted. "Martha can watch Lily for a few hours." Isaac looked like he wanted to object but held his tongue. There was something in Emma's determined expression that told him argument would be futile. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, with Isaac and James working together in the shop while the women tended to household matters. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, the conversation inevitably returned to Harrington and his ambitions. "He wasn't always like this," James explained. "When I first came to Silver Springs 8 years ago, Grant Harrington was just another rancher, albeit the largest in the area. It was after his wife died that he began to change." "Grief affects people differently," Martha added. "Some turn inward, others lash out. And some try to control everything around them because they couldn't control what happened to their loved ones." Emma said quietly, her own experience with loss giving her insight. Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. Whatever his reasons, Harrington's methods are becoming increasingly aggressive. The smaller ranchers and homesteaders need to stand together. "That's been the problem," James said. "Everyone's been dealing with Harrington individually. He picks them off one by one." "Then we need to unite them," Isaac declared, "starting at tomorrow's town meeting." The following evening, Emma found herself sitting between Isaac and James in Silver Springs' modest town hall. The room was filled with ranchers, shopkeepers, and homesteaders from the surrounding area. At the front, Sheriff Burke sat with the mayor and town council members, including Grant Harrington, who occupied a seat as though it were a throne. Emma noticed how people seemed to divide themselves in the room. Harrington's allies clustered near the front, while those who opposed him sat further back, speaking in hushed tones. The meeting began with routine matters: road repairs, taxes, and plans for the upcoming Founders' Day celebration. Throughout these discussions, Harrington remained silent, though his son and the hard-faced woman Emma had seen at Isaac's ranch occasionally spoke up. Finally, the mayor addressed the main agenda item. "Now, As you all know, there's been ongoing discussion about water rights in our county. Mr. Harrington has a proposal he'd like to present. Harrington rose, commanding the room with his physical presence alone. "Friends and neighbors," he began, his voice carrying easily to the back of the hall. "For years, we've all struggled with the unpredictable nature of water in this territory. Floods one season, drought the next. My proposal is simple: centralized management of our water resources." A murmur ran through the crowd as Harrington continued, outlining a plan that would essentially give his ranch control over the major water sources in the county, supposedly for more efficient distribution. In return for water rights, landowners would receive fair compensation and guaranteed water allocation based on their needs, Harrington explained smoothly. This would provide stability and predictability for everyone. "And who decides what's fair compensation?" a voice called from the back. "Or what our needs are, a committee would be formed," Harrington replied, "representative of the community." "With you as chairman, no doubt," Isaac said clearly, rising to his feet. All eyes turned to him, including Harrington's, whose expression hardened at the interruption. "Mr. Reed," Harrington acknowledged coldly, "I wasn't aware you had interests in Silver Springs." "I have interests wherever honest people are being pressured to give up their rights," Isaac replied. "This proposal is nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to control everyone's livelihood." Several voices murmured in agreement, emboldened by Isaac's challenge. "Mr. Reed speaks out of personal animosity," Harrington said dismissively. "He's never been one to see the bigger picture." "I see the picture clearly," Isaac countered. "You've been buying or intimidating people off their land for years. Those who resist face accidents or suddenly find their markets dried up." The mayor banged his gavel. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Reed." "It's the truth." James Townsend stood beside Isaac. "My family has been pressured repeatedly to sell our spring. When we refused, our supply deliveries were mysteriously delayed, and customers were warned away from my forge." Others began to speak up: a farmer whose cattle had been scattered after refusing to sell. A widow whose well had been mysteriously contaminated after declining Harrington's generous offer for her late husband's land. Emma watched as more people found the courage to share their experiences, united by the simple act of speaking aloud what had previously been whispered in fear. She saw Harrington's face darken with each new testimony, his control over the meeting and perhaps the town visibly slipping. "This is slander," Harrington finally thundered, silencing the room. "I've done nothing but try to improve this community, invest in its future, and this is the thanks I get." "The community doesn't need your kind of improvement, Grant," an elderly rancher called out. "We need to be left to live and work in peace." The meeting dissolved into heated debate, with the mayor struggling to maintain order. Throughout it all, Emma noticed Harrington's son whispering to the hard-faced woman, who eventually slipped out of the hall unnoticed by most. When the meeting finally adjourned, the mayor had tabled Harrington's proposal for further study, a clear setback for the powerful rancher. As people filed out, there was a new energy in the air, a sense of collective resolve that hadn't been present before. "You did well in there," Emma told Isaac as they walked back to where they'd left their horses. "We all did," Isaac replied. "It's the first time I've seen people stand up to Harrington so openly." "It may have consequences," James warned, glancing back at the town hall where Harrington remained surrounded by his supporters. "It already has," Isaac said quietly. "But staying silent has consequences too." As they rode back to the Townsend homestead under a star-filled sky, Emma found herself riding close beside Isaac. The events of the meeting had stirred something within her, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since Daniel's death. This place, these people fighting for their homes and livelihoods, mattered to her. And the man riding beside her mattered most of all. When they reached the homestead, Martha was waiting anxiously on the porch, Lily asleep in her arms. "Thank goodness you're back," she said, her face tense with worry. "Gordon Prescott was here while you were gone." James immediately stiffened. What did he want? He said he was just passing by, but he was asking strange questions about our property boundaries and the spring. Martha shuddered. There was something in his manner that frightened me. I kept Lily inside and didn't invite him in. "You did right," Isaac said grimly. "Prescott's timing is no coincidence. Harrington must have had him check your defenses while we were all at the meeting." "I'll check the property," James said, reaching for a lantern. "I'll come with you," Isaac offered, and the two men set off to inspect the boundaries of the homestead, leaving Emma and Martha to settle Lily for the night. "Emma," Martha said when they were alone, "I need to ask you something." "Of course. This man, Isaac Reed." Martha's eyes were searching. "What is he to you?" Emma paused, caught off guard by the directness of the question. "He saved our lives, Martha. He's been nothing but kind and honorable." "That's not what I'm asking," Martha said gently. "I see how you look at him, and how he looks at you when he thinks no one notices." Heat rose to Emma's cheeks. "It's complicated." "Life usually is," Martha replied with a smile, "but I haven't seen that light in your eyes since before Daniel passed. It makes my heart glad, sister." Emma sighed, sinking onto the edge of her bed. "It's only been a year since Daniel died. Sometimes I feel disloyal for having these feelings." Martha sat beside her, taking her hand. "Daniel loved you. He would want you to be happy to find love again. Especially with a good man who would protect you and Lily as he has." "I don't even know if Isaac feels the same," Emma protested weakly. Martha laughed softly. "If you can't see that, you're not as observant as I thought. That man rode through a flash flood and then navigated Apache trails to bring you safely here. He's standing against the most powerful man in the county for your sake. If that's not love, I don't know what is." Emma sat with her sister's words long after Martha had gone to bed. When Isaac and James returned from their inspection of the property, reporting nothing amiss, she found herself watching Isaac more closely, wondering if Martha was right about his feelings. The next day brought the Wilson family's barn raising, a community event that had been planned for weeks. Despite the tensions of the town meeting, nearly everyone from the surrounding area turned out to help. Emma was amazed by the display of cooperation and goodwill as men worked together to raise the frame of the new barn while women prepared a massive meal to feed the workers. Isaac seemed in his element, his strength and skill evident as he worked alongside other men to lift heavy beams into place. Emma found herself pausing in her food preparation tasks to watch him, admiring not just his physical capabilities, but the way he interacted with others, offering guidance to younger men, respectfully deferring to elders, always with a quiet confidence that drew people to him. "Your Mr. Reed is quite something," observed Sarah Wilson, the wife of the homestead's owner, as she caught Emma watching him. "Half the unmarried women in the county have set their caps for him over the years, but he's never shown interest." "He's not my Mr. Reed," Emma protested, feeling her face warm. Sarah smiled knowingly. "Maybe not yet, but I've seen the way he looks at you when you're tending to your little one, like you're something precious." Before Emma could respond, a commotion drew their attention. Gordon Prescott had arrived with two rough-looking men, clearly the hired guns James had mentioned. Their presence cast an immediate pall over the festivities. James and Isaac moved to intercept them before they could approach the main gathering. Emma couldn't hear what was said, but the body language was clear. Prescott was not welcome, and he knew it. After a tense exchange, Prescott and his companions departed, but not before casting threatening glances toward the Townsend family. What did Prescott want? Emma asked when Isaac returned to the main gathering. To deliver a message, Isaac said grimly. Harrington wants to meet with James and me tomorrow, supposedly to resolve our differences amicably. You're not going, Emma said immediately, alarm evident in her voice. We have to, James replied, joining them. Refusing would only escalate the situation. It could be a trap, Emma protested. Isaac's expression softened as he looked at her. It probably is in some form, but we'll be careful and we won't go alone. Several of the men here have agreed to accompany us. Emma wanted to argue further, but she recognized the determination in both men's faces. Instead, she nodded, though her worry remained evident. The barn raising continued, though with a subdued atmosphere. By late afternoon, the structure was complete enough for the traditional celebration. Musicians brought out fiddles and harmonicas, and despite the earlier tension, dancing soon began on the packed earth of the new barn floor. James and Martha joined the dancing immediately, their obvious affection for each other warming Emma's heart. She sat on the sidelines, holding Lily and watching the festivities with a small smile. "May I join you?" Isaac asked, approaching with 2 cups of cider. Emma nodded, accepting one of the cups gratefully. "You worked hard today. The Wilsons must be thrilled with their new barn." "It's what neighbors do," Isaac said simply. "Help each other when needed." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the dancers. Emma was acutely aware of Isaac beside her, the clean scent of soap beneath the day's honest sweat, the way his sleeve occasionally brushed against her arm, sending inexplicable tingles through her. "Would you care to dance?" Isaac finally asked, his voice hesitant in a way Emma had never heard before. She glanced down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I can watch her," Martha offered, appearing suddenly beside them as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "You 2 young people should enjoy yourselves." Before Emma could protest, Martha had gently taken Lily and shooed them toward the dance floor. Isaac offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Emma placed hers in his. The musicians were playing a waltz, slow and sweet. Isaac's hand settled respectfully at Emma's waist, the other holding hers as they began to move with the music. Despite his rugged appearance, Isaac was a surprisingly graceful dancer, guiding her confidently across the floor. "Where did a rancher learn to waltz?" Emma asked, finding her voice after several moments of heightened awareness of his proximity. Isaac smiled. "My mother insisted all her children learn proper dancing, said it was a civilized skill we'd need someday." "She was right," Emma replied, allowing herself to relax into the dance. "Though I imagine she didn't foresee you using it in a newly raised barn in Arizona territory." Isaac chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly through his chest. "Probably not, but she would have approved of the company." The simple compliment brought warmth to Emma's cheeks. As they continued to dance, the world around them seemed to recede, the other dancers, the music, the barn itself all becoming background to the connection growing between them. When the waltz ended, neither moved immediately to separate. Emma was suddenly aware of how close they stood, how Isaac's eyes had darkened as they gazed into hers, how his hand at her waist had tightened almost imperceptibly. "Emma," he began, his voice low. A commotion at the barn entrance broke the moment. Someone was calling for the doctor. Young Billy Peterson had fallen from the hayloft and appeared to have broken his arm. The crowd shifted as the doctor was summoned, and Emma and Isaac were separated in the confusion. By the time order was restored, and Billy had been tended to, the spell of the dance was broken. The evening wound down shortly after, with families beginning to head home as darkness fell. The ride back to the Townsend homestead was quiet, each person lost in their own thoughts. Emma's mind kept returning to the dance, to the way Isaac had looked at her, to what he might have said if they hadn't been interrupted. That night, sleep eluded her. Worry about the upcoming meeting with Harrington mingled with her confused feelings about Isaac. She rose from bed after tossing restlessly for hours, careful not to wake Lily as she slipped out to get a drink of water. To her surprise, Isaac was sitting at the kitchen table, a single candle illuminating the room as he cleaned his revolver by its light. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly as she entered. Emma shook her head, pouring herself a cup of water from the pitcher. "Too much on my mind." "The meeting with Harrington," Isaac guessed. "Partly," she admitted, taking a seat across from him. Isaac set the revolver aside, giving her his full attention. "We'll be careful, Emma. James and I both know what we're dealing with." "It's not just that," Emma said, gathering her courage. "It's everything that's happened since we met, how quickly things have changed." Isaac's expression grew serious. "Do you regret coming here?" "No," Emma said firmly. "Never that. Martha and James are wonderful, and this is the right place for Lily and me to build a new life." "But," Isaac prompted gently. Emma took a deep breath. "But I didn't expect you, the way I feel when I'm with you. It's all happened so fast, and sometimes I feel guilty because Daniel hasn't been gone even a year, and I promised to love him forever." "And Emma," Isaac interrupted softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Loving someone new doesn't diminish what you had with Daniel. It honors it. You learned how to love deeply because of him." Tears sprang to Emma's eyes at his understanding. "How did you become so wise?" Isaac Reed, a sad smile touched his lips. "Not wisdom, experience. I've lost people I loved too, my parents, my sister. Each loss taught me that life is too precious, too unpredictable to waste on regret or what might have been." Emma squeezed his hand, feeling the rough calluses that spoke of years of hard work. "What are you saying?" Isaac met her gaze steadily. "I'm saying that in the few days since I pulled you from that flood, you've become more important to me than anyone has been in a very long time. Maybe ever." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving Daniel. I know you have Lily to think about. But I also know that if you gave me a chance, I would spend every day trying to be worthy of you both." The simple, heartfelt declaration struck Emma with the force of revelation. Here was a good man, honorable, brave, gentle despite his strength, offering her a future she hadn't dared imagine after Daniel's death. "Isaac," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything now," he assured her, his thumb wiping away a tear that had fallen to her cheek. "Just know that whatever happens tomorrow with Harrington, whatever you decide about us, I will always be there if you need me." They sat in silence for a long moment, hands joined across the table, the single candle casting soft shadows across their faces. Finally, Emma rose, reluctantly withdrawing her hand. "We should try to sleep," she said softly. "Tomorrow will come early enough." Isaac nodded, rising as well. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Isaac." As she returned to her room, Emma felt a curious lightness despite the dangers that tomorrow might bring. Isaac's words had lifted a burden she hadn't fully recognized, the guilt she'd carried for beginning to love again. Whatever happened next, she was grateful for that gift. Morning arrived with an unexpected visitor. Joaquin had ridden through the night from Isaac's ranch with troubling news. "Two of Harrington's men came yesterday," he reported as they gathered around the breakfast table. "Asked many questions about when you would return. When I said I did not know, they looked around the property as if measuring it with their eyes. Isaac's expression darkened. Did they threaten you? Joaquin shook his head. Not with words, but their meaning was clear enough. They said Harrington would make a generous offer for your land, given that you seem to have other interests now. The old ranch hand's eyes flicked meaningfully toward Emma. So that's his play, James said grimly. Pressure us both at once. It changes nothing about the meeting, Isaac decided after a moment's consideration. Except that we'll be even more cautious. Despite Emma's and Martha's protests, the men prepared to ride to Harrington's ranch at the appointed time. 8 other ranchers and homesteaders had agreed to accompany them, providing safety in numbers. I don't like this, Emma said as Isaac saddled Thunder in the yard. Harrington's too confident, too certain you'll agree to his terms. Which means he has something planned that we haven't anticipated, Isaac agreed. But not going would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice. Last night you said you would always be there if I needed you. She took a deep breath. I need you to come back safely today, Isaac Reed. Promise me. Isaac's expression softened as he looked at her. Without hesitation, he leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. I promise. The group of riders departed shortly after, leaving Emma, Martha, and Lily at the homestead with Joaquin, who had insisted on staying to keep watch. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness as the women attempted to occupy themselves with normal tasks: laundry, cooking, tending the garden while casting frequent glances toward the road. They should have been back by now, Martha said, as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the horizon. Emma nodded, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Something's wrong. As if summoned by her words, a rider appeared on the road, not from the direction of Harrington's ranch, but from town. It was Sarah Wilson, riding astride like a man, her skirts hiked scandalously high to allow it. Martha, Emma, she called as she reined in her horse, there's trouble. The men were ambushed on their way back from Harrington's. Emma's heart seemed to stop. Isaac, James, they're alive, Sarah assured her quickly. 4 men were hurt, but none critically. They've been taken to Doc Miller's office in town. What happened? Martha demanded, already moving to saddle their horse. Harrington claimed to accept their refusal of his offer, Sarah explained. Even invited them to stay for dinner. But on their way home, shots were fired from the rocks near Eagle Pass. My Thomas says it was a warning the shots were deliberately wide. A warning of what? Emma asked, though she feared she knew the answer. That next time Harrington won't miss, Sarah said grimly. He's calling a town meeting for tomorrow. Says he has a new proposal that will resolve all disputes once and for all. We need to go to town, Emma decided, handing Lily to Joaquin. Can you watch her while we check on James and Isaac? The old ranch hand nodded solemnly. The Nina will be safe with me. I was a father once, long ago. Emma hadn't known this about Joaquin, but had no time to inquire further. Within minutes, she and Martha were galloping toward Silver Springs, fear driving them forward at a dangerous pace. The doctor's office was crowded when they arrived. 4 men were being treated for minor wounds, mostly cuts from diving for cover, when the shooting started. James sat with a bandage around his upper arm where a bullet had grazed him. Isaac stood nearby, uninjured but with a thunderous expression that softened instantly when Emma entered. You're all right, she breathed, resisting the urge to throw herself into his arms in front of the entire town. Just angry, Isaac replied, his eyes conveying what he couldn't say aloud. Harrington's men were careful not to hit anyone fatally. This was about intimidation, not killing. This time, James added grimly, wincing as the doctor tightened his bandage. The town was abuzz with the news of the ambush. For the first time, Harrington's tactics had escalated to open violence, and many who had previously remained neutral were now openly questioning his methods. The sheriff claims there's no evidence linking the shooting to Harrington, Deputy Collins reported, looking uncomfortable as he delivered this information. Says it could have been bandits or Apache. That's ridiculous, Emma protested. Everyone knows everyone suspects, the deputy corrected carefully. But without proof, the sheriff won't act against the most powerful man in the county. So Harrington gets away with attempted murder, Isaac said bitterly. Collins lowered his voice. Not necessarily. The territorial marshal is due in Silver Springs next week. He answers to the governor, not local interests. This news provided a glimmer of hope, but it didn't solve their immediate problem, the town meeting scheduled for the following day, where Harrington would present his final proposal. We should stay in town tonight, James decided. Safety in numbers. Isaac nodded in agreement. Joaquin is with Lily at your homestead. He's as capable as any man I know. Arrangements were made for Emma and Martha to stay at the hotel, while the men would take shifts keeping watch throughout the night. No one believed Harrington would attempt anything in town, but recent events had made them all cautious. As they prepared to separate for the night, Isaac drew Emma aside. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. About Harrington's proposal today. Emma tensed. What is it? He offered to withdraw all claims to water rights in exchange for one thing. Isaac's jaw tightened. Your sister's spring. That doesn't make sense, Emma frowned. Why focus solely on Martha's property when he's been trying to control all the water in the county? Because it's not about water anymore, Isaac said grimly. It's about pride and control. James and I defied him publicly at the town meeting. Your arrival and our defense of your family's property have become symbols of resistance. So this has become personal, Emma concluded. Isaac nodded. For Harrington, it always was. The water rights were just the beginning. He wants to be the unquestioned power in this county, and anyone who challenges that becomes a target. What do? We stand our ground, Isaac said simply. Together. The word carried the same weight it had when he'd spoken it in James and Martha's home, a commitment that went beyond the current crisis. Emma found herself reaching for his hand, drawing strength from his steadfast presence. Together, she echoed softly. Morning brought a town transformed. Word of the ambush had spread throughout the night, and by the time the town meeting was called to order, the hall was packed beyond capacity. Unlike previous meetings, the atmosphere was decidedly hostile toward Harrington, who sat stiffly at the front with his son and several supporters. The mayor, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room, called for order. We're here to hear Mr. Harrington's new proposal regarding water rights in our county. Harrington rose, his usual commanding presence somewhat diminished by the palpable animosity directed at him. Recent events have been regrettable, he began, choosing his words carefully. In the interest of community harmony, I'm prepared to modify my previous proposal. He proceeded to outline terms that, while less overtly controlling than before, still gave him significant advantage in water access and usage rights. The concessions he offered were minimal, just enough to appear reasonable to those not directly affected. When he finished, James Townsend stood. Mr. Harrington, your proposal still amounts to one thing: control. You want to decide who gets water and how much they get. That's not a compromise, it's just a more palatable form of the same demand. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Furthermore, James continued, you haven't addressed yesterday's ambush. 10 witnesses can testify that we were peacefully leaving your property when shots were fired at us from land you control. Are you accusing me of ordering those shots? Harrington demanded, his face flushing with anger. "I'm saying that nothing happens on Harrington land without your knowledge," James replied evenly. "Whether you gave the order or simply allowed it to happen, the responsibility is yours." The room erupted in shouts, some defending Harrington, many more condemning him. The mayor banged his gavel uselessly as control of the meeting slipped away. In the midst of the chaos, Emma noticed Gordon Prescott slip out of the hall. Something about his furtive movement sent a chill through her. She tugged at Isaac's sleeve, drawing his attention. "Prescott just left," she whispered urgently. "Something's wrong." Isaac's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room, noting other absences. Harrington's son is gone too, and those hired guns. A terrible suspicion formed in Emma's mind. "Lily," she gasped. "Joaquin is alone with her at the homestead." Isaac was on his feet instantly. "We need to go. Now." They slipped out of the meeting as discreetly as possible, alerting James and several others as they went. Within minutes, a group of 7 riders was galloping toward the Townsend homestead, fear driving them at a reckless pace. As they crested the final rise, Emma's worst fears were confirmed. Smoke rose from the direction of the homestead, not the normal smoke of cooking fires or the forge, but the thick, black plumes of a structure burning. "No," Martha cried, spurring her horse forward. The scene that greeted them was chaotic. The workshop was ablaze, flames leaping high into the air. The house appeared untouched, but several men, including Prescott and Harrington's son, were attempting to break down the door. Joaquin was nowhere to be seen. Isaac drew his revolver as they charged down the hill, the others following suit. "Prescott," he shouted, "get away from that door." The would-be intruders spun at the sound, reaching for their own weapons. For a terrible moment, it seemed a shootout was inevitable. Then a shot rang out from inside the house, splintering the wood near Prescott's head. "The next one won't miss," came Joaquin's voice from within. "Step away from the door." The odds suddenly shifted. Prescott and his companions found themselves caught between Joaquin inside and Isaac's group approaching rapidly from the hill. After a moment's hesitation, they backed away from the house, mounting their horses with haste. "This isn't over. Raid," Prescott shouted as they galloped away. "Harrington won't stand for this defiance." Isaac ignored him, leaping from his horse before it had fully stopped. "Joaquin, are you all right? Is Lily safe?" The door opened, revealing the old ranch hand with a rifle in one hand and Lily cradled safely in the other. "We are fine, patron." The Niña slept through most of the excitement. Emma was off her horse in an instant, rushing to take Lily from Joaquin. She clutched her daughter close, tears of relief streaming down her face. "What happened?" "They came with torches," Joaquin explained, his weathered face grim. "Said they were sent to teach a lesson. I saw them coming and locked us inside with the rifle. When they started the fire in the workshop, I fired warning shots to keep them back from the house." James and several men were already organizing a bucket line from the nearby spring to combat the workshop fire. But it was clear the structure was beyond saving. Martha checked Joaquin for injuries, finding only minor burns where he had initially tried to stop the fire before retreating to protect Lily. "You saved my daughter," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "How can I ever thank you?" The old man shook his head. "No thanks needed, señorita. A child's life is sacred." As the chaos subsided and the fire was eventually contained, preventing it from spreading to the house or other structures, a grim reality settled over the group. Harrington had escalated from threats and intimidation to outright destruction of property. Lives had been endangered, a baby's life. "This can't stand," James said as they gathered in the yard, surveying the smoldering ruins of his workshop. "Harrington has gone too far." The territorial marshal arrives tomorrow, Deputy Collins reminded them, having ridden out when news of the fire reached town. I've sent a rider to intercept him, to make sure he knows what's happened here. And until then, Martha asked, still shaken by how close they had come to losing everything. What's to stop Harrington from trying again tonight? We stand watch, Isaac decided. All of us, in shifts. That night, as promised, the homestead was well guarded. Friends and neighbors who had witnessed Harrington's escalating tyranny took turns patrolling the property, determined that no further harm would come to the Townsend family. Emma, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, found Isaac sitting on the porch steps around midnight, rifle across his knees as he gazed out into the darkness. "You should be resting," he said softly as she sat beside him. "I can't," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the workshop in flames. Imagine what might have happened if Joaquin hadn't been here." Isaac's arm went around her shoulders, drawing her against his side. The simple gesture of comfort felt natural, right? But he was here. "Lily is safe. You're safe." "Because of you," Emma said, looking up at his profile in the moonlight. "You've been protecting us since the moment we met." Isaac shook his head slightly. "I think you have that backward. You and Lily. You've given me something to protect, something to care about beyond my ranch and cattle." I'd forgotten what that felt like. Emma rested her head against his shoulder, allowing herself to draw comfort from his solid presence. "What happens after tomorrow? After the marshal comes, Harrington will face charges," Isaac said. "Attempted murder, arson, intimidation. Even with his influence, he can't escape the territorial courts. And then," Isaac was quiet for a long moment, "then you and Lily start your new life here with your family as you planned. And you go back to your ranch," Emma said, unable to keep the sadness from her voice. "Unless—" Isaac began, then hesitated. Emma lifted her head to look at him. "Unless—" Isaac turned to face her fully, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Unless you and Lily might consider a different future, one that includes me." Emma's heart quickened. "Isaac." "I know it's soon," he said quickly. "I know you're still healing from losing Daniel. I would never presume to replace him in your heart. But Emma, I love you. I think I've loved you since I saw you standing on that wagon in the flood, holding Lily against all odds." The simple declaration, spoken so earnestly, brought tears to Emma's eyes. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she whispered. "After Daniel died, I was certain that part of my life was over. Then you came charging into that flood and everything changed. Is that a yes?" Isaac asked, hope evident in his voice. "It's a not yet," Emma replied honestly. "I need time, Isaac, for Lily's sake, for my own, but my heart is already yours, I think. It has been since you risked your life to save ours." Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I can wait," he promised. "However long you need." Emma reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his weathered cheek. "Not too long," she whispered. "Just long enough to be sure we're doing this for the right reasons, not just because of all we've been through together." Isaac turned his head slightly, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'll wait forever if that's what you need." Morning brought the arrival of Territorial Marshal William Bennett, a no-nonsense lawman with a reputation for fairness and an immunity to local politics. He listened carefully to the accounts of Harrington's escalating pattern of intimidation, the ambush, and finally the arson at the Townsend homestead. "I've been hearing complaints about Harrington for months," Bennett admitted. "But until now, no one was willing to make formal charges. Too afraid of retaliation." "We're not afraid anymore," James declared, the other ranchers and homesteaders nodding in agreement around him. "Good," Bennett said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Because I need sworn statements from all of you to take action against a man as powerful as Harrington." By noon, the marshal had collected enough testimony to act. Accompanied by a dozen deputies brought from the territorial capital, he rode to the Harrington ranch to make arrests. The community held its collective breath, half expecting violent resistance. To everyone's surprise, Harrington surrendered without a fight. Perhaps he recognized that his influence had limits, or perhaps he believed his money would ultimately protect him from serious consequences. Whatever his reasoning, he, his son, Prescott, and several others were taken into custody and transported to the territorial capital to await trial. In the days that followed, a weight seemed to lift from Silver Springs. Farmers and ranchers who had been considering selling out to Harrington decided to stay. James began rebuilding his workshop with the help of neighbors, including Isaac, who spent increasingly more time at the Townsend homestead than at his own ranch. Joaquin, displaying unexpected depths, proved to be a masterful carpenter, directing the workshop's reconstruction with expertise gained during his youth in Mexico. He had also formed a special bond with Lily, who smiled and gurgled whenever the old ranch hand was near. 3 months after the flash flood that had brought them together, Isaac found Emma at the newly rebuilt spring house, collecting water for the evening meal. Lily, now 9 months old and attempting her first tentative steps, was secured in a small pen Joaquin had built for her. "I've been thinking," Isaac said, leaning against the doorframe as he watched Emma work. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, setting down her water bucket. "Perhaps," he agreed with a smile, "but necessary in this case." He stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "Emma, these past months have been the happiest of my life, despite all the trouble with Harrington. Being with you and Lily, watching her grow, helping James rebuild. It's shown me what I've been missing all these years alone on my ranch." Emma's heart quickened as she recognized the seriousness in his expression. "Isaac, I'm not rushing you," he assured her quickly. "I promised to give you time, and I meant it, but I wanted you to know that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, they've only grown stronger." Emma squeezed his hands. "Mine too," she admitted softly. Hope lit Isaac's eyes. "Does that mean?" "It means I'm ready," Emma said, surprising herself with the certainty she felt. "Ready to begin again, to build a future with you." Isaac's smile was radiant. "I was hoping you'd say that." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a simple gold band. "I've been carrying this for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Emma gasped softly as he knelt before her, still holding her hand. "Emma Carson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of allowing me to be a father to Lily, to build a life together wherever you choose, here with your family or at my ranch or somewhere new entirely." Tears of joy sprang to Emma's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Isaac. Yes to all of it." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a happy squeal from Lily drew their attention. The baby had pulled herself up on the edge of her pen and was watching them with bright eyes, as if she understood the significance of the moment. Isaac rose and gathered Emma into his arms, kissing her tenderly. When they parted, both were smiling through tears of happiness. "I was so lost that day in the flood," Emma whispered. "So afraid for Lily, for our future. I never imagined that being caught in that terrible moment would lead to the greatest happiness I could know." "God works in mysterious ways," Isaac replied, stroking her cheek. "Sometimes the worst moments lead us to the best ones if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." As they walked back to the house, Lily in Isaac's strong arms and Emma's hand tucked in his, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From terror and loss to love and renewal, from a raging flood to the calm certainty of belonging. 6 months later, Emma and Isaac were married in the Silver Springs church, with Lily now walking confidently, serving as an enthusiastic, if somewhat distracted flower girl. Martha and James hosted the celebration at their now prosperous homestead, where the rebuilt workshop had become the heart of a thriving business. The newlyweds settled at Isaac's ranch, where Joaquin continued to serve as right-hand man and honorary grandfather to Lily, who adored the old vaquero's stories and the wooden toys he carved for her. Emma started a small school for the children of neighboring ranchers, fulfilling her passion for teaching while building community in their isolated corner of the territory. Harrington and his accomplices were convicted and sentenced to years in the territorial prison, their influence finally broken. The smaller ranchers and homesteaders formed a cooperative water management association, ensuring fair access for all and preventing any single landowner from gaining too much control in the future. On the first anniversary of the flood that had brought them together, Isaac and Emma stood on the banks of Winding Creek, now flowing peacefully within its banks. Lily, nearly 18 months old, played nearby under Joaquin's watchful eye. "It's hard to believe it was only a year ago," Emma said, leaning against her husband's solid strength. "So much has changed." "For the better," Isaac said, his arm tightening around her waist. "Though I don't recommend flash floods as a way to meet your future spouse." Emma laughed, the sound bright in the clear air. "No, but I'm grateful for that flood every day despite how terrifying it was. It brought me to you." "No," Isaac corrected gently. "You were always meant to find your way here to this life to me. The flood just hurried things along." As they walked back to where their horses waited, Lily ran to them on sturdy legs, her face alight with joy. Isaac swooped her up into his arms, her delighted giggles filling the air. Emma watched them, her heart full to bursting with love for this family they had forged not from blood, but from courage, compassion, and the determination to build something beautiful from life's most frightening moments. In the distance, storm clouds gathered over the mountains, promising rain to the parched land. But this time, Emma felt no fear, only gratitude for the journey that had brought her home, and excitement for all the adventures yet to come.